Welcome everybody. This is our session on future-proofing your business with partner ecosystems. Thank you to the Cloud Software Association for putting this on. My name is Tyler. I head up marketing here at PartnerStack. I am here with Bryn, co-founder and CEO, and we're hoping to have a lively conversation. So, Bryn and I will kick things off with a little bit of a chat, but certainly feel free to drop in questions. Feel free to add comments, whatever you like. Let's make it interactive. And so, Bryn, I'd love to start with maybe my own kind of little personal journey that led me to PartnerStack. We started having conversations a couple of years ago, and one of the things that you mentioned in terms of a question that's floating around in your head and had been floating around in your head as you were founding PartnerStack was like, what does this world look like if there's no direct salespeople, or what happens if all of the salespeople in the world realize they could sell a dozen software solutions instead of being beholden to selling one. And I thought that was a really interesting, provocative question. It's one that drew me in a couple of years ago. But I'd love to start there. Like, where for you did that question come from? What was the genesis of that, and how did it lead to what we're doing now?
Yeah, it's a question that I'm still trying to answer today, but it's certainly the genesis for all of this. So it all got started way back in 2014. I was actually on my way from Toronto to Mexico over the holidays, and we previously founded this company called Pod. It was a collaboration platform for nonprofits, except we say it's like worse in every single way. And I saw the flight attendants walking through the plane, and I didn't see a ton of motivation really selling the headphones that are just so important. And anybody who's been stuck on a flight with an audio-visual system that doesn't work or no headphones know that it can get pretty boring pretty quickly. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, wow, what if they were incentivized to do this? What if, and then from that, like that's really where it started. And from that, taking it from the salesperson's perspective, what if you could sell anything? What does that mean? And that was how we initially started it. Like, what does it mean if you could sell anything? Because you could be an expert in so many things. And often when you're an expert in one specific domain, at the time, us, helping nonprofit organizations collaborate, we knew there was like 6 solutions that everybody needed, every single person needed. And what if you could incentivize people to go in and do that? And so that's where it got started. And quickly we realized, well, in order to support that, in order to really, put this motion first, you actually have to take the inverse perspective. You need to take the perspective from a vendor side. What does that mean? What do you need to support people that want to go in and sell you? What opportunity does that provide to you? And very quickly, we realized this vision of what if salespeople don't need to exist the way that we know them to exist today? What are the technical requirements, infrastructure requirements to support them? And how can a company grow and scale? What limitations do companies currently feel and experience that can be removed? And, where does this take us in the future? So it was a bit of timing with, gig economy stuff coming up, seeing some interesting opportunities, us having built our own referral program. And then it was through conversations with a lot of the vendors that we realized, like, wow, you can grow without salespeople. What does that look like? How do you paint a perfect world like that? And so we've been really chipping away at it ever since. And it's been very interesting to see people come to market with new ways of doing it. Because I think that over the last few years, the one thing that's become clear is you can do that. Just how much and what are the steps in order to make that happen?
Nice, that's great. And I think I think what's interesting about the question is you've seen forms of this question pop up, right? Like, what would this look like if we had to grow revenue without a huge direct sales team? And I think over the past 5 years, 10 years, a lot of the attention has gone to product led, right? That's been sort of the answer to that, is like, hey, there might be a little bit more of an efficient path. Let's look at what product led could look like. And that, for those that aren't familiar with this idea of product-led growth, certainly Google it, check it out. But most oftentimes you're looking at either a free version of your product to get people into it, and then you land them, you expand them, you grow revenue that way. But now we're transitioning into this idea of partner-led. And if anybody saw us at Ecosystem Week, you saw some of the data that we shared in terms of just how much this idea of ecosystems has taken off. And I suppose where I'd like to go is just a level set of terminology. So when we talk about ecosystem, like, what are we talking about? How do you think about it as a CEO? And not necessarily even a CEO of a company that's in the space, just as a CEO that's always focused on growth. How are you thinking of this idea of ecosystem? Is it different from partnerships? Like, what's happening in the space right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll try to define what I believe a partner ecosystem is, especially on the vendor side, the company side of things. Because I think without the definition, it's very hard to build on like a rocky foundation. And so my belief is that partner ecosystem is really the orchestration of all indirect revenue channels. And that orchestration happening from a centralized place, a centralized platform. And if you can do that, then the end goal is ultimately how do you meet your customer where they are at? And I think that's what ecosystem represents. I think partner is going to be here forever and always. But I think when you think of it through the lens of an ecosystem, you realize that there are different stakeholders, and in order to build a successful, a successful indirect revenue channel, you need to service those different stakeholders. And I think ecosystem really captures that. Whereas I think partner is really more one-to-one. Ecosystem is one-to-many. And with indirect revenue channels, like that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to do one-to-many. And every party is trying to do one-to-many. That's whether, there are two SaaS platforms coming together, looking to go one-to-many to each other's customer base, whether it's through an agency, whether it's through a reseller, whether it's through an affiliate, whether it's through account, like there's so many different ways to do this. But I think that ecosystem's here to stay. I think it better captures the value creation that's there. I think partnership will never go. It is at our core what it is that we go in and understand. But I think that for us to define like what this partner ecosystem is, again, it's really the orchestration of all these indirect revenue channels from a single platform with the goal of meeting customers where they are at. If we can do that, the potential is huge. And it's something that I know everybody on this call and everybody part of the CSA is focused on doing every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think it's probably important to contrast that definition and that thinking with what is another fairly dominant definition of ecosystems out on the market, which is a definition that is very much focused on integrations, right? Your ecosystem is who you integrate with. And I think that's part of it. But I think even the word ecosystem itself, right? It is all encompassing. It is all of the participants. It is all of the players. And I think, one of the things that I see in the market, one of the things that I hear when talking to customers is there is a missed opportunity when we think too narrowly, whether a partner being or an ecosystem being just folks we integrate with, or just a type of partner, right? My ecosystem of agency partners, whatever it might be, my ecosystem of affiliates. I think the opportunity ahead of us is, to your point, how do we bring everybody together, and how are we very deliberate about how we work with them? But also, I think once we get to the truest definition of ecosystem is, how do we get them working with each other? I think that's the most interesting piece, right? It's not just, let's say us, right, as a software company orchestrating one-to-one conversations, which I think is still a lot of what we see, but it's how are we actually making connections? How are we connecting an integration partner with a referral partner or an affiliate? And how do they actually start to exchange value? So I think as we're thinking about a larger ecosystem strategy, there's a lot to think about, and to me that's part of the end goal is how do we get everybody providing value to each other, and to your point, what we're looking for is sort of scaled access to customers, right? Meeting customers where they're at. Cool. There's Bruce just dropped in a comment here, just saying that he likes that definition of it being all encompassing. Bruce, let me know if there's a question in there that I missed, or if that's just a comment. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about, it might sound simple, but why do we care? Why is this important, and why is it particularly important now? Like, why not continue to lean into direct sales? Why not continue to lean into product-led initiatives? Why not continue to dump money into growth marketing? Why should we be putting serious attention to investing here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that everybody who has operated inside of indirect revenue, who has operated inside of the ecosystem, who has operated inside of partnerships for their entire career, it's always felt like now, right? Like, it's always made sense. But I think that for the first time ever, we have different parts of the organization, the market, telling us that ecosystem matters. I think it starts from a point of, the market opportunity for cloud, for fintech, for technology companies is way, way bigger than we thought it was going to be in 2015, right? That's when PartnerStack got founded. Back in 2015, no one had any idea that our ability to impact and the ability for technology companies to impact the way that we work was as big as it is. And that has led to, moving from direct sales to growth, to product-led growth. And, each initiative that you do is a new market, a new way to go to market. And it allows you to meet a new customer base. And once you figured out your funnel, once you figured out, how to do direct, how to do product-led growth, how to do growth marketing, you eventually get to, okay, so how do we do this at the biggest scale we can possibly think of? And, in a market where money is free and you can spend whatever you want to go in and get, it makes sense to try to control it yourself. But in a market that has changed so much in the last 12 months, I mean, if I was to think of what was happening in September 8th, 2021, we had a booming technology market and money was being dumped in. And it made sense, right? Interest rates were low. It made sense to try to drive growth as much as you could on your own. But the market is all of a sudden listening to us because there's an understanding that growth matters, but efficient growth, right? Anti-fragile growth, growth that can really infinitely scale if you manage it correctly. The only way to really achieve that is through ecosystem. And to me, that's why it's exciting. We've realized the opportunity is massive. We know that there are existing channels that make sense for companies to turn online and for customers to use. And then from an ecosystem standpoint, this is the efficient way to grow. And so I think that everybody here on this call and in the CSA believes strongly that ecosystem and indirect revenue, indirect growth, is really like, this is the decade that is in front of us. And, we're already a few years into that decade. So like, really it comes down to how much can we prove that to be true?
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things I want to touch on in there. So, one is you mentioned the word anti-fragile. So let's just define that for people a little bit. So if folks aren't familiar with this idea of anti-fragile, it's something that we've talked a lot about at PartnerStack internally, based on a book by Nassim Taleb. So definitely worth just Googling it, checking it out. But really the idea is everybody talks about being resilient, right? How do you remain resilient through, in this case, down markets, let's say. And what he suggests is, well, the goal shouldn't be to be resilient, because resilient means you come out the other end of stress and chaos and pressure the same, right? No change. You live through it. You haven't broken, but you haven't grown. The idea with being anti-fragile is how do you actually grow under that pressure? How do you succeed? And he uses a lot of examples that aren't specific to business or certainly startups. He uses the body as his main example, right? Exercise, a lot of tension, you're breaking your muscles down, but they grow back stronger. And so when we think about this idea of being anti-fragile, I suppose we can go a couple ways with this, but I think one interesting one would be, again, as CEO, as a co-founder of a VC-backed company, what are some of the things that you're thinking about, whether that includes ecosystems or not, about kind of navigating through this market and coming out the other end stronger? Any thoughts worth sharing, suggestions?
Yeah, I think from an anti-fragile standpoint, I think it's important to go in and look at the data, first of all, right? And really to simplify it even further, I have a pretty simple mind. And so when I think of anti-fragile, I think of improvement. How am I constantly improving? And how, when things get more challenging, can I improve at an accelerated rate? And so if we look at the companies back in 2008, that grew at an accelerated rate during, but actually even after the great financial crisis, you'll see the companies that grew at that accelerated rate, like HubSpot, like Salesforce, like Microsoft. That was an opportunity for them to lean into their ecosystem and their partnerships. And so, I am a big believer that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. We saw the same thing happen in COVID. There was this initial pullback, and then when we came out of it, geez, everyone went into the growth through ecosystem. And so I think of ecosystem and partnerships as being the fastest way for software companies to improve the way they grow, improve the way they service customers, improve the way that they collaborate together. And if we're looking for constant improvement, it's important to understand that the best improvement, the real differentiator, those things happen under times that are most challenging. That is when you can, really build a successful strategy. Because if you just aim for how do we just continue to maintain, or how do we be resilient, or all these like very admirable things, if you look at the data, those companies don't. It's not a successful medium and long-term strategy. Short-term, it might feel okay, but often, what do we know in life? The things that feel good short-term probably aren't the things that you should be investing a ton of your time in. The things that show outsized returns in the medium and long-term, those are the things that you should be really doubling down on, while being still able to show short-term results. So that's what I'm thinking of: is anti-fragile is consistent improvement. And that improvement can, actually accelerate inside of the most challenging environments. And if everybody can be, operate what we say at PartnerStack, being above the line on that, and you can be, have a fresh perspective and be open to the challenge that's in front of us. That's how it will happen.
Nice. And I think, to put some numbers to some of this, what we see, and again, if you came to Ecosystem Week, you would have heard some of this, but for companies that have invested and leaned into partnerships and this idea of ecosystems, and they're doing it well, right? So I'll caveat by saying they're doing it well. This isn't necessarily the average, but they're seeing, new revenue come through at a rate that's twice as fast as their typical kind of go-to-market, coming through at half the cost to acquire, and at an ACV that's a little bit higher. And so there's very tangible kind of results that companies are looking at when they're investing into this area properly. And so let's maybe go there. Let's maybe talk about, what does proper look like? Where do people start, right? Especially in a market like this where there's a lot of urgency to grow efficiently. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It kind of builds off the question that I see George has there in the chat. In what ways would you ensure everyone in the ecosystem is bringing value to each other? Do you have a playbook for introducing agencies' affiliates to integration partners? In what context? A real life example, if any. I think the place to start, and so thank you for the question, George. It's a really good question and builds on nicely, Tyler, what you're asking. I think you have to start by understanding that you need to build something inside of at least a high growth technology company. The most valuable thing that you can do is you need to build something that can scale, that has scale. Custom one-off solutions, custom processes. These are the things that cause nightmares in meetings. They might get the job done right out of the gate, but it's important to be first very deliberate. We're deliberate in all other parts of the organization, and we have tools for days to ensure that we're deliberate, right? First started with Salesforce, then we went to a marketing automation system, and now we've got like Gong level insights, Loom level insights that we can go in and track and see who's actually engaging. But the one consistent thing there is engagement. And so where do you start? You start when you're building out an ecosystem platform program, when you're building out a playbook with how do I increase engagement? In order to understand how do I increase engagement, you have to know who are you engaging, right? And so the beginning is really a collection of data, asking people, putting a sign up on your business that says, I am open for business, and learning who those people are that are coming in. It's the exact same way as you would launch a company. Super nerve-wracking, you don't know, but if you just start making assumptions on who your customer is and not listening to what the market is telling you, you will miss the opportunity. And so engagement starts with understanding who are you trying to engage. And so simply asking, or simply saying, we're open for business, who wants to partner with us? When you begin that conversation, you can then segment the different partner types, and you can determine who you want to invest the time and resources with, because the people who are affiliates are different than the people that are resellers, are different than the technology partnerships. All of them bring value. Every company will have some value creation from all of these channels. It just depends at what volume, right? But by understanding that you probably want to invest the resources where you see the most engagement, you will probably get outsized returns where you see engagement. I think that's how you have to start. And the way you do that is you don't put yourself first. You put your partner first. You put your ecosystem partner first. They will tell you if you engage them. So if you look at the most successful sales reps, are actively using Salesforce, are like best in class at working their funnel and pipeline, have multiple touch points. You can track every single piece of it. The same thing is true within ecosystem. You have to be looking at your ecosystem or your partner engagement score. Who is interacting with you, and how do you move them through the funnel? Because once they engage with you, then you can bring them through the funnel. And not everyone will make it, and that's perfectly fine. But an engagement is so important. I would actually say that engagement is even more important than acquisition. A lot of people go in focusing like, oh, I just need to get all these partners, or I need to get this one specific partner. That's the silver bullet. No. That is something that you layer on. That's gasoline that you layer on once you know that there's engagement. But you need to start with that foundation. You need to start with the source of truth to track all of this and to build that foundation, to build on that foundation.
Cool. I want to expand on that a little bit and address some of what's in George's question here, because it's a really good one. So just to answer explicitly, do you have a playbook for introducing agencies, affiliates to integration partners, as an example? The answer is not right now. We do not. But what I'd suggest to everybody here, if you either sign up for our newsletter or you just shoot me an email at tyler@partnerstack.com, what I'll do is I'll make sure that you get our upcoming guide that touches on this. So we will be launching in about a month a guide that gets pretty deep into partner recruitment. And then part of that are strategies around how do you connect various different partners in your ecosystem so they can provide value to each other. But a tangible example of this would be, and actually, let me take a step back. Let me kind of mention why this isn't happening. So in a lot of organizations that we see and that we work with, you have affiliate being managed by one team. And then you have agency partners managed by another team. You have integrations managed by another team. And so you have internal stakeholders that aren't necessarily talking to each other. You don't have one group that has kind of a view into all of your various partner types. And so there's no opportunity to start to kind of elevate opportunities where an affiliate might be a great opportunity for an integration partner to connect with, to work on a piece of co-marketing together. And so what we see is the companies that centralize all of the partner types into a single function, and they're very deliberate about how they engage them, they work with them. Now you start to see opportunities where, hey, you know what, I should really be introducing this affiliate partner with this integration partner, because the affiliate is talking about the exact same thing that the integration partner is doing. They're working with the same types of people, the same audience. There's an opportunity to connect them. And so to start, I think it's as simple as just making sure you have that view across all partner types and kind of manually brokering these relationships where it makes sense. And then you can start to think about, okay, through a platform, how do we start to scale this? But it can really start as simply as that. And that's oftentimes what we see, is it does start there.
Yeah, and Tyler, maybe just building on that a little bit and getting into to Tanner's question there too, about hearing some hard case studies and stats on why centralizing partnerships is advantageous. Let me just tell you what we do at PartnerStack. Right, it's kind of funny. In the earliest days, I'll use names because because it's well deserved. In the earliest days, we built a platform to help partnerships, very focused on affiliates, and had a lot of success there. The way we did that was through direct sales. We didn't have our own partnership program. We didn't have we weren't eating our own dog food, drinking our own champagne, whatever you want to go in and say. We just weren't doing it. But when we looked at the most successful rep on our team, who is, and many of you know, was Nikita, one of our earliest hires, like one of our first three, 4 people onto the team. Nikita was doing this anyway. That's how Nikita was being so successful. He was working with agencies. He was getting in front of customers through agencies. And what we did is we just said, okay, we need to implement PartnerStack. If we're going to sell this value in market, we better go and invest in it. And it's one of the biggest regrets that I have. Not that we invested in partnerships or that we invested in Nikita's, or the results that Nikita was showing. The biggest regret that I have is I didn't listen to Nikita enough. Nikita was right. The experimentation needed to start early, and we needed to define what the results were. And so when we implemented PartnerStack for ourselves, we launched a program, and we were open to agency partners, reseller partners, through the referral motion, as well as affiliates. And we found very quickly, we thought that we would be growing through, affiliates. We thought that would be our primary go-to-market, because that was largely who in the early days was inside of our network. And we had direct relationships with all these affiliates. And what we learned was that it wasn't the affiliates that were driving as much success as it was referral partners through the agencies, reseller partners through the agencies. There's a lot more excitement there. Now, we still have affiliate partners, and it drives significant amount of revenue. But in that first 2 quarters of launching our partner program, we quickly climbed from, indirect revenue, partnership, ecosystem-driven revenue, doing 0% of our revenue, or at least the way that we were tracking it, to indirect and ecosystem revenue doing, 10 to 15% of our revenue. And now at PartnerStack, ecosystem and partnerships, we're looking at 25+% of new business coming through there. And we would not have been able to do that if we had not invested the technical resources to make that happen. And I like to draw comparisons for things that we did before. One of the earliest things we did at PartnerStack was we implemented Salesforce. I didn't know what I was doing. Really, it was just someone told me I should do it, so we tried to do it. And I look back now, and I knew a whole bunch of founders at the time that refused to, in fact. They did not want to build a CRM. It was too much of an investment. They would not do it. Well, all those founders, 12, 24, 36 months later that were successful, still had to go back and do it. And it caused a lot of pain and problems. Whereas for PartnerStack, because we had Salesforce and we, of course you have to get people using Salesforce, we were able to, in a much more seamless way, control the sales process, understand the sales process, add value and give value to the sales reps, identify who we should really go and be targeting. We were much more deliberate in the way that we went to market. And I wish I took the advice that someone gave me to take Salesforce and implement Salesforce before building a sales team to rolling out and building our own partnership channel. I wish that we had invested in the technology. When we did invest in the technology, and of course, don't invest in the technology if you have $0 in revenue. I'll tell you right now, like you're an early stage company, there's so many other ways that you can solve this problem. This isn't technology for everyone. But if you are a company that has product market fit, and you are bringing the level of sophistication to your marketing and your sales and your success organizations, and you want to continue to scale, you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't you bring that same deliberate investment to partnerships? It is actually probably the single biggest regret that I have as a leader of the organization. It's almost embarrassing to go in and talk about, but it's the truth. Partnerships is our most consistent channel. Partnerships, have proven to bring in a whole bunch of partners into our ecosystem that we share relationships with that we didn't ever think that we would be working alongside. And I think at the end of the day, it's just been better for our customers. And our customers would tell you that the partner sourced deals that come in through PartnerStack, they're valued at like 2 times the average deal that we have. The payback is much greater. Our win rate is unbelievable. But this also didn't happen overnight. Takes time, takes investment. You have to listen to what's happening, and you need to make the deliberate investment. I hope that answered some questions. Happy to dive in more if there are more from that, George and Tanner.
And so where to start? Where should that initial deliberate investment go? And what type of expectation should people have in terms of a return, time frame for return?
Yeah, so if you have, I think it's important to define the timeframes. You have short, medium, and long term. Long term can be 3 to 5 years. All the executives, all the fresh ideas always start with 3 to 5 years. What does this mean? You have short term, which is really like, what are you looking for in the next 90 to 180 days? And medium term, which is 180 days to 12 months. Because you got to be able to show something there. Short term, you're really looking for the same type of results that you would see in something like Salesforce. What does a successful deployment look like? How fast can you deploy? What is the engagement that you and your team are having with it? Right? Like Salesforce is completely useless if no one uses it. Same thing with partnerships. Are you uploading documents? Are you editing emails? Are you doing everything you can to prepare an environment and an instance to make folks successful? And then medium term, short term, the next step is about engagement. How many people are applying to your program, right? Once you understand how many people are applying to your program, then you can ask, where are those applications coming from? Is it coming from inbound? Is it coming from outbound? I'll tell you right now that at PartnerStack, we know that the average we call it an active quality connection. Active quality connection is when a lead sign up or sale is made within a previous 90-day window. It's about 5% of inbound partner requests turn into active quality connection. So you have to open a big funnel because of 5%, like you have to open a big funnel. You have to do everything you can to promote, inbound folks for coming in. But we also know that, 25% of outbound partnership motions that are done, those turn into active quality connections. So I'm a big believer that starting with an inbound strategy is the fastest way to go to market. In part because outbound is really successful, but only when you know exactly who you have to go in and target. And when you start to see the engagement happen, when you start to see partners responding, when you start to see partners, reading documents, when you start, and then when those, referrals, which turn into ultimately revenue, start coming through, you're just building a funnel, and you're just helping people through that funnel. So I think that's what you should be looking for. Like if you're to hire a salesperson, you're not expecting that salesperson in the first 90 days to really generate revenue. There's usually quota relief. There's usually quota relief for the first 6 months. You should be thinking the exact same thing for partnerships, but you should know that, again, in the inbound side of things, 5% of folks that come through the door, they're going to actually be successful. In the outbound side of things, and only after you've gone and defined it, 20, 25% of people that you go and recruit can be successful. But this can't be done off the side of your desk. This is a full-time commitment. You can't magically turn and generate 30%, 40% incremental revenue. There's a deliberate investment the same way as you would a sales team. And anybody that's been a part of an organization that's building a sales organization will know that there are missteps along the way. And it takes a while, but you have to start doing it early and often.
And I think I love to chat about getting buy-in, which is, somewhat related to Tanner's question here. So Tanner's, he's suggesting that they're struggling a little bit with selling this idea of consolidating all of their channels under one roof. Like, how is this idea of ecosystem, bringing all of your partners together under one function, one strategy? How is that different from what they're doing? Which, Tanner, correct me if I'm wrong, but sounds like what we mentioned before, different functions. Thoughts on getting that buy-in? So there's an existing program in place. I'm going to make an assumption that probably each function is delivering value. So why change?
Yeah, so there's an existing program in place. Why change? I think the single biggest area of opportunity inside of partnerships is to not speak the language of partnerships and ecosystem. I think that we as partnerships and ecosystem professionals are incredibly guilty of developing crazy jargon that no one inside of the C-suite, whether it be in sales, CEO, finance, marketing, they don't care. They just don't care. They don't care whether it's affiliate-driven revenue or marketplace-driven revenue or integration-driven revenue. They want to know, how do I bucket it? And you bucket it by saying it's indirect revenue or ecosystem-driven revenue. Like that's the way, because they think of sales as direct revenue. They think of marketing initiatives as indirect and direct revenue. Like, we should be speaking the same language. We don't need to redefine anything. And so you bucket it under indirect revenue. You tie it to ecosystem, and then you break down the different drivers of that indirect revenue. You show that there's affiliate, there's marketplace, there's integrations, there's account mapping, there's reseller, there's referral, refer a friend, customer refer. Like there's so many things that sit inside of it. Do not solution with your executive team about indirect revenue. As soon as you start doing that, you will lose them right away, because there are so many other things that they're going and worrying about. And so if we can standardize indirect revenue, standardize ecosystem revenue, whatever we want to go and call it, let's use language that they're used to. And then let's build a case study around, here are the 6 different channels, 7, 8 different channels that we could go and pursue. Here are the experiments that we can run to prove that it will be in fact useful. So, the experiment shouldn't be all of a sudden we're going to do 10% incremental revenue. That is not a good experiment. No one will believe it. I think a lot of the reason why as ecosystem partnership leaders, we fail is because we put out unrealistic expectations and we don't get budget for it because everyone knows it's not realistic. Because if it took 24 months to develop a repeatable sales process, and that's really how long it takes, 24 months by the time you recruit a leader, bring the leader in, implement the technology, have your first group of sales reps through, watch them, succeed and more often fail, build the enablement resources for them to go in and do, bring in marketing to go in. It takes 24 months to develop a repeatable machine. This does not take 24 months to develop a repeatable machine inside of partnerships. That is not what I'm telling you, but you need to have realistic goals at 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months, and fully ramping in that 24-month period is very important. But being able to show real proof points in the short and medium term is also really important. So standardize the language, show the experiments that you're going to run, and then walk through the potential that exists inside of ecosystem. And the reality is with ecosystem and partnerships, one ecosystem or partnership person should be able to generate far more revenue because they have the scale of working through many than a single salesperson. It's as simple as that. And the other thing is partnerships and ecosystem, we complement sales. We help sales. Show people how we help each other. We help success. We help marketing. We are an indirect channel. Someone needs to be responsible from that. And it needs to be standardized as much as we possibly can. So I think that we sometimes pit ourselves against other people that really want to be advocates for us in the organization. And we need to understand from a top-down standpoint, how do we simplify the language? How do we not get into marketplace this, integration that? How do we listen to some of the executives that have these crazy, wacky ideas that, more often than not never work out? And how do we distill it down to, this is indirect revenue. Here are the channels. Here are the experiments. Here's the time frame. Here's the expense, and this is how it compares to AdWords. This is how it compares to our content strategy. This is how it compares to sales. Everyone's going to know it. Ask questions. How long did it take for our sales team to get up and ramped? How long did it take for 6 reps to hit quota on one quarter? What were you can learn things from other departments as well. I think that's another important piece.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because if you didn't, that's where I was going to go with it. Specifically the language piece. So I think this is a really important topic, because oftentimes what I see with people in their roles, in their careers, they are trying to force their language on an exec team. It's like the exec team doesn't need to adapt to you. You need to adapt to them. Like, you need to use the language of the people making, signing the checks and approving decisions. And so you want to think about, how do I position everything in a way that the team is going to understand? So I think that's number one. Completely agree. And if the pitch is, Tyler and Bryn said, consolidate everything, one function, one channel, because ecosystem, probably not going to get buy-in, right? I see a lot of people kind of pitching, well, because ecosystem, that's the pitch. To your point, nobody's going to give a shit, right? And so you want to think about, what is it that I'm actually trying to achieve? Where do I think I can go with this? Tanner, you're probably, I believe this is the case, that you're in a dedicated affiliate role. I think the first step is, within that role, whatever your role is, and this can be true for everybody, whatever your role is, think beyond the role, right? Think about how you can help the company first. And over time, I'll just say it, if you have a smart exec team, they're going to start to realize, it's like, oh, we have a person that's thinking company first. They're thinking about all of our partners holistically. They're recommending really interesting experiments, really interesting tests that aren't even going to help them in their role, but it's going to help the company. Over time, that's going to get noticed. And over time, you're naturally going to start to have the conversations around, like, hey, what does this look like if we actually start to pull things together, right? What if we start to look at this as what we've talked about, like a very deliberate, orchestrated strategy? I think there's kind of a sneaky way to get it. And it's about using the language that your company uses and thinking about kind of the company holistically and making recommendations that might be a little bit outside of your role.
Tyler, just kind of very tactical piece of this is, the most successful executives, the most successful founders, the most successful VCs that I go in and speak with, they are certainly capable tactically of doing their job, working from the bottoms up. But they all start their pitch, their strategy from top down. Don't build into the punch. Lead with what's there. Indirect revenue should do 30% of our revenue. It should be our most efficient channel. Ecosystem is the best way for us to go in and get it. And then walk and explain how that happens. And part of that is where we are today and what we're going to go in and do next. But if you start with, here's where we are today, and this is what we want to build to, you don't get the attention that is so rightfully deserved. This is a critique that we received when we went through every business incubator at the beginning. Was don't hide the story, right? Like tell it, and so tell it like the inverse way, and use data to go in and support it, because those are incredibly effective, and that's how the C-suite communicates.
Yeah, for sure. And to everybody else, I would encourage, dropping in any pointed questions you might have in the last 10 minutes here. Where's this all going? What do you think, Bryn? So we're, we know this downturn in the market isn't going to last forever. It never does. What does this look like out the other side?
Downturns are very uncomfortable. A lot of uncertainty is built into it because the reality is we don't know what's on the other side. It's different. And so we should accept that on the other side of this downturn, whatever you want to call it, is it a valuation correction? Is it like there's so many ways to go in and define it. And I think we spend way too much time trying to define what's happening and not what might be and how we can be part of that. So we know that during every downturn, as painful and as uncomfortable and as much uncertainty as it brings, it gets better on the other side. It's been proven over and over and over and over and over and over again. And what is better, right? Well, we're hearing it every single day. We're hearing we need companies to be much more efficient. We need companies to be thinking of not just spending every dollar. It's not just growth at all costs. It's growth that makes sense. And so on the other side of this, I firmly believe that we're going to see a lot of ecosystem first companies. Partnerships leaders will be like the first way to go to market. Because going back to our original question of do we need to have salespeople? What if salespeople didn't exist? We should be driving towards that. And it's not as though it's like, us against them or anything like that. The reality is salespeople probably become partnership or channel managers. They're managing relationships with multiple people, the same way as Nikita was way back in the day. They're driving outsized returns. That is good for them as individuals. They will make more in commission. This is why they should be interested in investing in it. It is good for the company, and it is good for the customer. And so, do I think that there's a world where salespeople won't exist? Yes, but it's not as simple as like a black and white. It's more like what is the new world? And I think that ecosystem has an incredible role to play in building that. But we know things will get better. We know things will be more efficient, and we know that there is a practical, tactical, and momentum movement happening inside of technology companies to grow through partnerships and ecosystem. And so let's action it. Let's figure out how we tell this story the right way. Let's get our leaders on board. Let's work with each other. Let's learn cross-functionally. And let's know that there's going to be a lot of lessons. So I'm very hopeful to hear all the things that didn't work. I'm more than happy to tell you the things that didn't work with PartnerStack in the early days. Because I think we need to celebrate some of that stuff too.
Well, that feels like a good place to wrap up. I feel like that was a good little monologue, Bryn. I'll leave some space here for any questions that people want to ask. Another shout out, if you're going to be at SaaSter, check out the link in the chat. We will be having a little cocktail hour with the Cloud Software Association, so hope to see you there if you're going to be in the area. And then the other thing I'd shout out, which I mentioned earlier, if you do check out our website and go to the resources section, you'll see a couple new guides that we launched. One on what it means to be a T-shaped ecosystem leader. So what are the skills, both broad skills and kind of in-depth skills that leaders should be thinking of developing if you want to be an ecosystem leader. So check that out. And then we have a pretty good recap of Ecosystem Week. So a lot of good, very actionable pieces out of that, and then a whole slew of other blog posts. So with that and those plugs, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I'd love to just thank everybody here. Thank you, Bryn. Thank you to the CSA. Please feel free to follow up with any questions that you might have. Bryn, any parting words?
Yeah, parting words. I do actually have an ask.
All right.
In line with engagement, something that we really do mean. We want to know what you need to help and to be successful inside of your organization. We want to know the playbooks that you need. We want to know, the data that we can share with you. Please reach out to me directly, to Tyler, make a request, because the way we're going to do this is we're going to grow through ecosystem. Everybody in the CSA, everybody that's asking questions, everybody in all these different various groups, the way we will be successful is if the ecosystem is successful. And so let's invest in it. If you can ask us, the best investment we can have is questions. And so ask us for the resources. We would love to work with you or alongside you to go and build that out. But thank you for the opportunity at CSA. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you for everyone's questions today. And yeah, last plug for SaaSter in person, cocktail 5 to 8. Can't wait to see everyone there.
Perfect. Well, that's great. Thank you. Everybody has 5 minutes to get to the next meeting. Enjoy the day.